is still in effect, and the town council has made or will make the necessary findings under the law to hold teleconference meetings in this manner. Proper notice was given for this meeting. All persons are permitted to join remotely and address the town council directly, and the meeting will be delayed in the event of a town-caused disruption. This meeting will be held in all respects according to the requirements of Government Code Section 54953E. Town manager is present in his office, and I am present in the council chambers. Vice Mayor Dornbecker and council members Moeller, Knight, and Tagliabachi, along with staff, are participating remotely by video and audio in conformance with Government Code Section 54953E. Members of the public have been able to participate and provide public comment as a Zoom webinar attendee using the Zoom raise hand feature, and I can call on an individual at the appropriate time for that public comment. Also, through the town's public comment email, publiccomment@wyville.com, and also via the e-comment feature in PrimeGov, which can be found as a speech bubble with the HTML agenda. And before we proceed with the agenda, I would like to remind our viewers that any vote taken during this teleconference portion of the meeting will be taken by a roll call vote by our town clerk. And with that, I'll move ahead now. Well, one more thing. In addition, public hearing and administrative regular items that have representatives that are not staff will provide presentations as they would during a typical council meeting, and we'll call upon those individuals to speak during that particular agenda item. Now, I will ask our town clerk to confirm with all members of the council that they can hear the proceedings and that they have today's agenda. I will go ahead and invite our returning town clerk, Eddie, to go ahead and ask that of each of our council members. Provide presentation.
Yes, Mayor. Give me 1 second. We were resolving a small issue with the sound, and you can hear the background right now. Give me 1 quick second.
Now I will ask. You can tell that there's a little delay for Eddie.
My apologies, Mayor. We were trying to troubleshoot a little bit of the issues with the sound. It sounded a little bit crispy, funky, but it's been fixed now, so the sound is working as normal. And with that in mind, Council Member Tagliabachi.
Yes and yes.
Council Member Knight.
Yes to both questions.
Council Member Dornbecker. I'm sorry, Moeller.
Yes to both.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
Yes to both.
Mayor Dunbar.
Yes. Thank you. Let the record reflect that all council members have indicated they have the agenda and can hear the proceedings. So thank you very much for that. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next up is the adoption of today's agenda. I don't know of any corrections. We will be making a correction actually to the content of the resolution for item, let's see, item 10C. There will be a content correction when we get to that item, but in terms of the agenda, I believe that we are all set. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
So I believe that was Vice Mayor Dornbecker with the motion. Second, Councilmember Moeller. Eddie, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
Yes.
Council Member Moeller.
Yes.
Council Member Tagliabachi.
Yes.
Council Member Knight.
Yes.
Mayor Dunbar.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to move on in that agenda to our next item, item 5A, a proclamation declaring a climate emergency. And just to give a little bit of context, as we heard in our last meeting on March 1st, there are many members of our Napa County community interested and engaged in advancing climate action initiatives. And one of those efforts is to have each jurisdiction recognize the science behind the current global climate crisis, and for each of the jurisdictions to recognize that. And what we are doing today is I have written and am presenting for consideration to the council, or not consideration for the council, on behalf of the council, a proclamation recognizing a climate emergency on behalf of the Yountville Town Council. I will go ahead and read that proclamation, and then if there are any council members that would like to comment on that, I would certainly welcome that, and if we have any members of the public that would also like to comment. So as I stated, this is a proclamation by the Yountville Town Council declaring a climate emergency. Whereas global scientific consensus exists recognizing that climate change caused by human activity represents a growing danger to human health and safety, wildlife and natural habitats, and economic prosperity, and that the need for long-term climate preservation steps is urgent. Whereas 195 countries have signed the Paris Agreement, acknowledging the threat of climate change and the need to combat it, targeting the goal to keep global mean temperature, quote, well below 2% Celsius above pre-industrial levels, end quote, and to, quote, pursue efforts to limit temperature increase to 1.5% Celsius, end quote. Whereas the 2018 U.S. government report, Fourth National Climate Assessment, detailed the significant threat to the American economy posed by climate change and underscored the need for immediate climate emergency action at all levels of government. Whereas Napa County and its residents, economy, and environment already have experienced dramatic adverse effects from climate change, including catastrophic wildfires, rising temperatures, mudslides, severe droughts, property destruction, damage to infrastructure, and loss of life. Whereas the town of Yountville joins a growing list of communities committed to a goal of net zero climate pollution by or before 2030, and further commits to evaluate all planning and policy decisions through the lens of this pledge, and to implement both immediate and sustained actions in support of this goal. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the town of Yountville, along with the town council, declare that a climate emergency exists and commit to providing leadership and services in partnership with residents, community organizations, businesses, Napa County, and regional jurisdictions to educate, mobilize, and accelerate support for comprehensive and sustained climate action, to reduce harmful environmental impacts, and strive to achieve a goal of net zero climate pollution. Signed, John F. Dunbar, Mayor. So I'd like to invite any members of the council, if you would like to comment on this, because this is a declaration that is representing all of us. So I invite anyone, no obligation, but if you'd like to. I'm going to go first to Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
Thank you, Mayor Dunbar, and I wanted to thank the student who came and spoke with us at our last council meeting as well. As members of the County Climate Action Plan Committee, it's, we talk about this all the time. We're making this a public statement and committing to this. So thank you very much for introducing.
Sorry, Vice Mayor, we are having some audio trouble with you. You're breaking up a little bit, so we'll let you know if we have any trouble in the future, but thank you. Any other members of the council care to comment? And Vice Mayor, if you could lower your virtual hand, that would be great. Thank you. I'll go to Councilmember Knight and then Councilmember Tagliabashi.
Mayor, just want to say that I fully support the declaration and thank you and the Vice Mayor for your participation on the Climate Action Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tagliabashi?
Yeah, I echo my peers and thanks for your proclamation and for the presentation by the students and for all of those people who are working to help bring climate change to everyone's awareness. I think it's an important issue, one that's not going away anytime soon, and one that I hope we work all together to figure out how to solve it. So thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not going to leave you out, Councilmember Mueller.
Thank you, Mayor. I also applaud the town of Yountville for putting together this proclamation to show our unity with our other municipalities, as well as the, everything the county is doing on this. So very happy we're part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do recognize we have one submitted public comment from Lori Stelling. Eddie, are you going to read that into the record?
Hello, Mayor. Dear Mayor Dunbar and Yountville Town Council, I just wanted to take a moment tonight to voice my strong support for the Town Council Climate Change Emergency Proclamation. As a parent, it is heartening to see the inclusion of your goal of reaching net zero climate pollution on or before 2030, following the lead of MVUSD, Calistoga, and American Kindness resolutions. As I recently shared through verbal comment, following Students for Action presentation to Town Council, in this moment, I feel more strongly than ever that now is the time for us to work together as a Valley community to take real policy action to address the climate emergency in a way that lets our youth know via our actions that we care deeply about their future and will do all we can to heal our planet and provide them with a livable world. I view tomorrow's climate change emergency proclamation as an important step towards every jurisdiction within our Valley, standing firmly behind our youth and full climate resolutions and unified momentum. My family is taking notice of each step you take, and we thank you for your leadership in recognition of the urgency of the climate crisis and committing to do all you can within this crucial decade. Lori Sterling.
Thank you. Did we have any other public comments submitted on this item? Thank you. And I want to also acknowledge that this is not the last step that the Yountville Town Council, the Town of Yountville, will be taking. I'm quite confident that we'll continue, and in many ways we've been leading Napa County with our climate initiatives, and I'm very proud of all the work that we have done. I want to commend our Public Works team in particular for all of the installations of climate solutions we've had, from pesticide bans to our resident initiated ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, significant recycled water activity, tree replanting, and tree protection policies, and methane recapture. We have a long list that we can be very proud of, and we'll continue to add to that list. So this is not the last, but just one of many steps that we will take in our climate action. So again, I want to thank the public for engaging in the comments that we've received, and look forward to an ongoing dialogue. Next, we have another proclamation. This is honoring someone who's been very special for generations. Her family has been very special to Yountville, and in particular to Rose Solis. I know that we were anticipating to possibly have some of the members of Rose's family joining us today. I don't know that I see anyone yet. So if they're in a waiting room, if we can make sure that they're available. If not, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and we'll be presenting this not only to the family, but I will also be presenting it at the celebration of life that's going to be happening on March 27th. I wanted to make sure that we as a council were able to recognize formally in our council meeting with this proclamation honoring the life and legacy of Rose Solis. Whereas Rosabelle Rose Franco Solis was born on July 10th, 1953 at St. Helena Hospital. Rose attended Yountville Elementary School, and in her youth often picked prunes in orchards around town. She also was a member of the Native Daughters of the Golden West Grand Parliament. Whereas Rose was fiercely loyal and passionately loved and protective for family and friends. Known as, quote, the Queen of Yountville, the people in Rose's life knew no boundaries. A proud Democrat, she attended the ultra-exclusive Bohemian Grove campground in Monterey, California, where access usually was restricted to many of the highest profile male Republican political and economic leaders of her time. Whereas she worked as a building attendant for the town of Yountville, often volunteered for Yountville Little League, Yountville Elementary School, the Pathway Home Military Veteran Treatment Program at the Yountville Veterans Home, and she held annual New Year's parties at Poncha's so local veterans would have a place to celebrate. Rose also helped firefighters, veterans, local nonprofits, and families in need with fundraising, toy drives, and holiday celebrations. Whereas for many years, Rose bartended at Poncha's of Yountville, the oldest business in town. With her own unique style, Rose became known for her original Bloody Mary mix, as well as her reaction to anyone who unknowingly ordered a blended cocktail. She was proud that the family-owned bar was recognized in a 2012 Playboy magazine article as the best dive bar in the country. She regularly made her opinions known to everyone around her, and some patrons considered it a badge of honor to be shown the exit door by Rose for any or no reason. Whereas regular patrons became familiar with one of Rose's favorite sayings. Helen Waite is our credit manager. If you want credit, go to Helen Waite. She enjoyed playing pool, bocce, and bingo, often winning top honors in local contests. Whereas Rose is survived by her daughter, Rosanna, grandson, Lucas Solis, sister, Jenny, 3 brothers, and many other family members. A celebration of Rose's life is planned at the Estate Yountville on Sunday, March 27, 2022. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, along with the Town Council, remember and honor the iconic and colorful life of Rose Solis upon her passing on February 3rd, 2022. As I said, we will present this to the family and share that with the public during the celebration of life later this month. So with that, it's someone that we have known, I think all of us, for many, many years, and it's always sad that one of our members of the Yountville community is lost, but we look forward to celebrating Rose's life. I'll move ahead next to our public comment period for any items that are not on today's agenda. Eddie, do we have any?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent calendar then. We have 3 items, consent calendar 7A, B, and C. I had submitted some corrections to the minutes of March 1st. Eddie, do we have those that have already been corrected and updated in the agenda packet, or those will just be corrected for the public record in the town's records?
They will be updated in both. The agenda will have it updated as well as the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments about the consent calendar, or is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar as corrected?
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion, Councilmember Mueller, second, Councilmember Tagliabashi. Roll call, please, Eddie.
Councilmember Mueller,
Yes.
Councilmember Tagliabashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker,
Yes.
Mayor Dunbar.
Yes. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up, I'm going to invite Gary Bell to present on selected state legislation from 2021. And we have quite a list. Gary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. Eddie and or Julie, can I have permission to share my screen? You guys see that all right? Okay, great. Well, every year, as you know, the legislature passes thousands of bills. The governor signs quite a few of them, but not all of them. And quite a few of them also impact town operations and local government operations generally. So we review those bills, update town staff, and now annually, I think for the last 3 years, I've provided an update on a few of them. So this year was a little unique. The legislature was still addressing COVID. Housing was still a priority for them. So there were fewer bills this year than normally, but there were still quite a few. And we'll discuss 8 of them today. So first one we'll talk about is SB 323. This was a priority for Cal Cities. They worked really hard on this bill along with CSDA, the Special Districts Association. For those of you active in the league, you're probably aware of the bill. There have been a series of late filing challenges to water and sewer rates across the state to people who did not participate in the administrative process when the agency adopted it, perhaps didn't even live in the jurisdiction at the time. They've been allowed to proceed under some exceptions to the general rule that you need to participate in the administrative process before you challenge rates later down the road. That gives the town a chance and other local agencies a chance to address the concerns, perhaps revise the rates, and fix the problem before it ends up in court. It's the reason for the rule in the first place. But there have been carve-outs to that. So the league pushed forward, the legislature passed, and the governor signed SB 323. Relates to Mitigation Fee Act, which are your connection and capacity charges for sewer and water, and then Prop 218, which is the process you go through for a protest hearing to impose sewer and water rates. It establishes a 120-day statute of limitations after the council takes action on that, and all local agencies, frankly, counties and special districts too, that go through the same. You have to use the validation statutes. This is a unique procedural tool for litigation. It's a little unusual from normal lawsuits, and it does not apply to billing errors. So overcharges or undercharges are not included within the statute of limitations there. The longer one applies. AB 571, the legislature is still active in the housing arena. They're going to continue to be active here, including next year. So there's going to be a whole bunch of bills currently being considered that'll take effect in January 1 of next year. But this is one from last year. Under the density bonus law, you get certain increased units if you propose a certain percentage of affordable. Town has its own ordinance that implements the density bonus law as required by state law. This law prohibits imposing housing impact fees, affordable housing impact fees on deed restricted units that qualify under the density bonus law. So it includes things like inclusionary fees, in lieu fees, and public benefit fees. Does not prevent the town or other local agencies from imposing service charges, fees, and assessments, including those to pay for the bill's implementation. And the state has determined that it is not constitutionally required to reimburse the town or any other local agency for this. You probably have heard of state mandated local programs. Generally, the state's required to reimburse the town and other local agencies for state mandates unless the local agency has the ability to charge a fee or raise revenue to cover the cost. And that was the determination the legislature made here. AB 803, there is an ordinance that staff is working on right now that will come back. This is similar to a companion legislation to SB 9 and SB 10, for which the town has already considered an ordinance. This applies in multifamily zones. SB 9 and 10 applies in single family zones. AB 803 applies in multifamily zones. This one requires approval of single family housing units in fee simple ownership lots. There's a lot that's zoned for multifamily. It can be divided into single family individual parcels and sold off in that way. Has to meet certain criteria though, and if it does, town has to approve it. This is the no discretionary review provisions for housing that are common these days from the legislature to remove local control and discretion. Also can't impose things like setbacks between units, except as the California Building Code requires. There's a certain number of feet. I think it's 3 or 4. Kirsty may have the exact number there. Can't impose minimum lot size or parking requirements enclosed or covered, or the formation of an HOA if it meets the requirements here. Town is required to approve the development unless it finds certain things. Doesn't meet the bill's requirements. Those are the requirements we just discussed. Doesn't comply with other land use requirements. Those are things like generally applicable requirements in your zoning code. Doesn't comply with the general plan, zoning, subdivision, or design standards, or would have an adverse effect on public health or safety. And you'll see that last factor appear in a lot of the housing legislation. The legislature is including this as a release valve if the proposal would affect public health and safety, or there's some adverse impact that can't be mitigated. That's always a basis to deny it. That's true of SB 9 and 10. It's also true of AB 803. This one relates to floor area ratio for multifamily units that go in. This preempts the town's floor area ratio that would otherwise apply to such a project. The town is prohibited from imposing a floor area ratio less than 1 on a housing development of 3 to 7 units and 1.25 on a housing development project of 8 to 10 units. Also prohibits imposing lot coverage requirements that would preclude a project from achieving those floor area ratios, but it only applies to housing development projects that are located in multifamily residential or mixed use zones. It's another example of a housing bill from this year. SB 52 has to do with the power safety shutoff, the PS events that were so prevalent and are less prevalent now, thankfully, but could come back in the future. As you know, the governor can proclaim a state of emergency. He has, one is still in effect. Locals can also proclaim their own state of emergency under local ordinance implementing the Emergency Services Act. The town has such an ordinance. A local emergency is defined to include, among other things, a sudden severe energy shortage. And now a sudden or severe energy shortage is defined to include a de-energization event, such as planned power outages by electrical corporation. When a local emergency is declared, there's certain powers for adopting regulations and can move more quickly to do certain things to respond to the emergency. And a de-energization event is now included in that definition. AB 473, for those of us, particularly the town clerk, who has to use the Public Records Act frequently in responding to requests, the legislature has taken it upon itself to reorganize the entire act. They haven't changed any substance to it, but they've recodified the whole thing. So all new numbers, for those of us who are used to using it or going to a particular section to find a provision in there, it's not going to be listed there anymore. They've reorganized the entire thing. Substantively, it's the same, but the new organization and the new numbers take effect on January 1, 2023. This will affect the form letters and other routine processes for Public Records Act requests that we use, but it won't change the substance of how the town responds to them, just the numbers and where you find the relevant provisions. This one relates to the Brown Act. Current law authorizes any person to request a copy of an agenda before the meeting to be mailed to that person. This now allows a person to request that a copy be emailed to them. If for whatever reason it's not possible to email, you can mail a hyperlink to the person who's requesting it. That's really for agencies that don't have a website or email capabilities. The town shouldn't have that issue. There were a series of exceptions, not only that the town imposed with its own local program under its emergency powers for businesses, outdoor dining, that's going to be discussed a little bit later on the agenda today. The state also did the same in temporarily suspending some of the requirements for ABC licenses. Some of those were desirable, and the state has recognized that, and they've now passed laws that allow some more flexibility for certain ABC licenses. So for on-sale alcoholic beverage consumption licenses with a bona fide public eating place, they're now allowed to sell distilled spirits for off-sale consumption if the beverages are in a manufactured prepackaged container or ordered for pickup by the consumer. You can also do it for off-sale consumption, not in a manufactured prepackaged container if certain conditions are met. Those are listed here on the slide. There's more flexibility for this industry after 2 years of COVID-19 where it appeared to work. And they requested these changes and the legislature responded. Similarly, SB 314, same basis for alcohol licenses by allowing businesses to use a catering license 36 times at a single location, used to only be 24. It also allows certain licensed manufacturers to share a common license area with multiple licensed retailers. So depending on the licenses in town, I think for tasting rooms, not many of them will cover in these license types. Perhaps some will for other locations as well, but these are changes in the ABC licenses that might have some impact on town. And then finally, AB 773 is a slow streets program, also in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The town and many other jurisdictions allowed for use of streets and public right-of-way under some kind of program modifying use permits, encroachment permits, or something of the like. This law modifies the vehicle code to allow for what's called a slow streets program. where you can actually close or limit vehicular access to neighborhood local streets with connections to bicycle networks like the town has, to a business district, or to green space. In revising these, the state needs to give express authority to do so. That's how the state law is set up. So now there's a provision in place that allows you to implement the program. There's some procedures for that: notice and input from the neighborhood, adoption of a rule or regulation by ordinance of the town, but there's now authority in state law to implement this type of program. And with that, I will hand it back over.
Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate that really thorough summary. Let me just get my screen back. Okay. Are there any questions from the council on the presentation of legislative activity? Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully there's a short answer from the Town Attorney Bell or Planning Director Kirsten. It's on SB 478 and their attempt to talk about FAR, floor area ratio. Now, I always understood that to mean we always approved a fraction of one, that one is total coverage of a lot. So I'm confused how they're saying they would allow 1.0 or 1.25 coverage. And I think we do have multi-use zoning. So could you explain maybe briefly, or we could follow up later, that impact on our zoning?
So I think that's right, that 1.0 FAR would be total coverage. And I think that's what the legislature is getting at, to make sure that those higher unit, higher density projects are allowed to go in.
That would mean a two-story unit. In this case, I think we look at, all floors. So in a 1.25 floor area ratio, it would be a two-story unit.
So are we, so this is a current law in place. Is it preempting any of our FAR, floor area ratio, FAR
I believe it only applies for the one zoning district in the town of Yountville, which would be the RM district. Correct, Gary? Just multifamily?
Yes. No, correct. It only applies in multifamily, and the project would have to propose the number of units, the minimum number of units, to trigger the FAR under the bill.
So that would, for us, would be likely an infill lot, but I mean, we're only talking about maybe there's not many in those districts currently that would affect us.
I think that's
There's
right.
only one vacant parcel with that. There's only one vacant parcel with that current zoning.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Did we have any public comment come in on this item, Eddie?
We do not, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Gary, very much for the annual update. There's going to be plenty more to come this year, I'm sure. Next, we have no public hearings today. So next up is the first administrative regular item, item 10A, request for council discussion and direction to staff to develop a streamlined process that would support the positive impacts of outdoor activities allowed by temporary measures included in the Economic Recovery Program, or ERP. I believe, are we starting, Kirsty, with you?
Just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So thank you, Mayor, and the council for being here today. I just want to start and also thank the Whitney Diver McCoy with the Chamber of Commerce. She helped escort myself and town manager Rogers. We walked around all the downtown areas that had this, and as you'll see, I was taking photos. So as most of you know, in response to the COVID pandemic, the town council was proactive and worked really well with the business community to develop what I'll be calling from here on the ERP program. The ERP offered temporary allowances to support additional operations of their businesses because of the pandemic, and these measures were allowed to continue for another year and are set to sunset this summer. The council directed staff to evaluate what elements of the program should be considered for continuation, and the following slide outline the program and staff suggestion moving forward. Out of the ERP program, 37 local businesses participated. Most of them participated in many elements. 16 of them included outdoor seating, 8 included temporary tents, 7 temporary signage, 5 temporary retail, 5 curbside pickups, 5 fee waivers, and other miscellaneous. Out of those elements, staff suggests discussing tonight outdoor seating. Staff suggests the council only continue temporary tents as part of a special event permit. In addition, staff is suggesting the council initiate a comprehensive review of the sign ordinance to respond to the temporary signage. Again, tonight we'll be discussing temporary retail activation and curbside pickup. The fee waivers and miscellaneous and all other concessions will sunset, and the business operations will return to the original use permit conditions. Positive outcome of the pandemic. Next council meeting, you guys will be hearing the negative financial aspect of the pandemic. But today we get to talk about all of these businesses, these 16 of them, which participated in outdoor seating, most of which were along Washington Street, but not all of them had a Washington Street address. I wanted to start with existing use permitted examples. As we all know, this is the Bistro Gentil adjacent courtyard. Things to note is you can see permanent heaters, permanent fans. Clearly, this is an extension of a room. And although this is very attractive, today we are just focusing on seasonal outdoor seating. Another example of permanent use permitted courtyards that are working. Some things to note here: there's nice mature landscaping, there's long-term planter boxes. They also have portable heaters and permanent outdoor furniture. Something to consider is that this mature landscaping may take away from the public street interface experience and or the activation of the streetscape. And the combination of the umbrellas and the awning is something that I'd like the council suggest for a more long-term shade structure for other businesses who would want to be included in this. In addition, here's another example of a use permitted outdoor seating. Some things to note is it's very integrated into the overall design. It can be visible from the street. It's a nice courtyard. And one thing to note is the ABC governs the delineation of any outdoor alcohol. So what you'll start to see is the theme of the temporary, or in this case, permanent separation to comply with that ABC. Here's a good example. This is a morphed, use permitted, and then expanded as part of the ERP. Some things to note is it's a nice example of long-term planters to delineate the area to comply with the ABC requirement. I also like the integrated design of the temporary heaters. And now we're moving into businesses that outdoor seating are entirely approved from the ERP. These are some things to note that we noticed when we were out here. Some nice high top bistro tables. It already has some existing shade. And according to the business owner, most patrons prefer to sit outside. Here's another example. This was a table and 2 chairs that was afforded by the outdoor concession as the ERP. And it acts as flexible interim seating while folks are waiting for their guests. And I often, as I walk by, see it in use. Here's another example. This is Silver Trident on the Washington Street frontage. This is the example of those temporary ropes or stanchions to comply with that ABC requirement, and then smaller tables and chairs. Staff has met with the management and believes there's a lot of potential to activate this location, and they would be, if passed, looking forward to more permanent presentation. This is the same business on the side of the courtyard, and staff does encourage this because it allows the pedestrian to have a secondary peak or interest from the street side, and it extends that street activation experience by having somebody want to know what's through there. Hill Family Estates, another example of an outdoor seating approved as the ERP. 2 small tables. Something to note here is the existing awning extends the entirety of where the tables could be. And it's a good example of a permanent shade that extends over the area. And again, staff has heard from the management that they would be interested in presenting a more permanent alternative. This was just an example of a temporary umbrella and some nice porch activation. Here's another example. This is the Cornerstone Cellars at the back of the Whistle Stop. Again, you'll see the common theme of these temporary stanchions to comply with ABC, and it's not visible from Washington Street. However, it activates the courtyard and provides a nice visitor experience. Here is an example of a temporary use of these small table and 2 chairs, but it's not really used as intended. It's currently used to showcase some wares. Staff thinks that had they had a more permanent option, they could come up with some design elements that would be more integrated into the overall design and could encourage more of a street activation. And this is a good example of how temporary signage and points to the opportunity to look at a more comprehensive analysis of the sign ordinance. In addition, it is a good example where the investment could create more of an intention of the streetscape. We're coming to the end of the outdoor seating, and I just wanted to highlight something that's quite unique. This is the R&D patio. Both the Honor Pizza, which is their takeaway opportunity, and the limited table service may not fit into the provisions as I originally drafted. So you'll see in the following slides, I have a few potential recommendations for consideration. I wanted to end with some inspiration. Here's some outdoor seating, a summer in Paris. We've got a Irish bakery in Dublin, and my favorite, some nice outdoor patio with the long-term planters, delineation, and the long-term shade structures in London. Now we're going to transition to another positive outcome of the pandemic. We call this temporary retail activation or a limited term use permit. I wanted to start with what's typically approved with a special event permit, and this will continue, and this is not to compete with the special event permit. The conversation today is on a much smaller scale. And I wanted to share a success story that I found from the ARP, which is the temporary retail activation of this cottage adjacent to the Jessup Cellars pop-up. In response and inspired by the Yountville Locals Days, it was encouraged for Yountville small businesses and Yountville locals to patronize what they called pop-ups. It was a local business who wanted just to showcase their wares that didn't have enough business to rent a full-time place. And the staff's opinion of the process was that it was really successful from a communication perspective. It was great to hear all the positive success that was resulted from it. And it encouraged us to provide an opportunity for these temporary use permit or temporary retail activation. And then finally, another success is this curbside pickup. Originally 5 businesses participated. However, I can only see 2 that still continue, and it's the R&D pickup and the Southside pickup. Staff use the curbside pickup as a really a benefit to the local residents, to local staff who wants to go pick up a quick lunch. And we really think that the council should consider keeping it. So as I discussed, there was some anomalies since drafting the original staff report. I did want to make a suggestion for the council to consider that the activation be for all main streets and not just Washington. And then consider these temporary use permits to be allowed up to 6 months. This could be both the Jessup pop-up or the takeaway portion of R&D, or if there's any other vacant retail space that want to take advantage of this temporary retail, that it could be considered for longer term with the council discretion. We can come back to this. What I did is I cut and pasted the draft criteria that I originally added, just some points to consider to start the conversation. For the outdoor seating, I would suggest these minor changes to remove Washington Street and just say it must have an activation of a major street. And we can come back to these. And then I would consider something in regard to consider a 6-month extension for these temporary use permits with approval by council or ZDRB, whatever you believe necessary. And then no changes to the curbside pickup. I would consider this to be quite a simple, besides the inclusion of long-term signage. And I just want to conclude with some kind of thoughts to start the conversation. Really, the intention of being here today is to listen to the council, get some direction on what you believe was successful out of the ERP, and then determine which of them you would like to continue. Consider directing staff to initiate the review of a comprehensive analysis of the sign ordinance with the ZDRB separate to today's action. Confirm that all the other elements will sunset in July 1. And then if you would love to work with ZDRB on the design criteria if you wish. However, because of the time frame and the ZDRB's regular schedules, it does put off the final adoption of the streamline ordinance to happen right before it sunsets. So I would want some direction of how you would like to have a grace period. At this point, staff believes that I could continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce, work with individual business, develop a draft ordinance for your analysis and review in just under a month. And I kind of mirrored the ordinance to other jurisdictions who do things like this. And it would basically be developing those criteria. And if it met those criteria, staff would either approve it or defer it to the ZDRB under council. And I do believe there's some public comments. So at some point we should have either the clerk or the mayor address those.
Yes, thank you, Kirsty. And before you stop sharing your screen, in case there's any question from council that you want to refer back, quickly, I have two questions. One is, what are you referencing when you say other main streets beyond Washington Street? Where would this potentially be?
Well, when you go back to the map, there were some addresses. Maison Fleury, I believe, is a Yount Street address. And then, so I think it would be Washington and Yount. And then the R&D kitchen patio, that's technically visible from Madison. So even though it has a Washington Street address. So I think it would be a business that has views from a public main street is the way I drafted it. So those are the ones I was thinking about.
It's not necessarily the street address, it's the visual or the visibility of the activation based on
Correct.
Direction. Okay.
Well, and there is some benefit, I think, for all businesses that got to enjoy the interface of the outdoor. So even little patios that are sort of visible from Washington Street, I still think should be considered because a little peek or a little side view, I think, is also activating to the streetscape.
And you brought up Maison Fleury. What activation have they actually employed as part of the?
I have to be honest. It was when I was presenting the map in the presentation over the last couple of days that I actually realized once I saw the polka dots on the map that there were areas outside of Washington Street, and I can bring that up.
Yeah, so I just want us to consider whether that's creeping into the residential area too much or not.
Well, and here's another example: the Cornerstone Courtyard. It's technically not visible from Washington Street,
but the business is a Washington Street business, and that's where I think we may consider if a street address of the business is Washington Street, that might limit the exposure to the commercial corridor. But again, for consideration, I just worry that we have some permits that are being allowed at least along Washington Street and residential at residential addresses, and we want to make sure that we're not adding a commercial activity in a neighborhood without absolutely. Unintended consequences. So
absolutely.
The other question I had for you, have you had any feedback about parking impacts? I know we only have 2 pickup activations remaining, but there were some that had pickup that were on site, like ad hoc is one that I can think of, where it wasn't on the street using parking spaces, but they had activation on the property. Is there any concern or is there any evidence that there were problems with losing a couple of parking spaces for curbside pickup?
I have not heard. I do know that the south side one is a public parking spot, so that would be something that the council would have to take into consideration. And the R&D, sometimes I see one, sometimes I see two. I would assume they probably monitor that when they need to, but I have not heard of any negative impacts of it.
And Mayor, Council, Kirsty, if I could just augment that. I think the private businesses like R&D and ad hoc, it is part of their parking flow. It just helps to allow that parking use to support those. We had two public spaces. Earlier during the pandemic, there was also a curbside to go in proximity to Protea before Protea closed for business. So there were two public and then the allowance on the private parking lots. And really it just allows that for more frequent turnover is what we've learned. The residents come in and out. The space still keeps getting used. And we've heard, what I would say is we've heard very positive feedback from a lot of locals that they appreciated that and the availability of the to-go parking as opposed to when it's fully, you know, the ad hoc and the R&D lot can be full at times.
And what's the status of the parking at Chichio? Because I know that there was activation for outdoor seating in the front patio, and there are still two barriers, town of Yountville barriers that are in front of those two parking spaces.
As Director Shelton outlined, Chichio's had applied for opportunity to use the space and to increase seating and was allowed to have those spaces. They never fully activated as was intended, so that use will cease and be one of the, there are several uses that, as the director outlined, will go away. They expire on June 30th unless the applicant wants to come to the council and seek a more formal use permit amendment.
And I'm not sure if this is part of the potential ZDRB design review, but I'm going to assume that the plan is to no longer use Town of Yountville barricades as placeholders or to identify signage for businesses.
So that's the whole point, is when the ERP sunsets July 1, that what's before you today is to offer long-term solutions, and one of the requirements for the curbside pickup would be long-term signage. Otherwise, it would just simply sunset.
And so when we're talking long-term, are we saying these are permanent changes, or is there a renewal?
At this point, I'm suggesting it actually be a use permit amendment on a case-by-case basis, and then it would actually amend their use permit with conditions, and then it would be reviewed as part of the annual use permit monitoring. And if council wishes, it could come back for an annual report on how it went.
What I'm hearing you say is, yes, it's permanent as long as they comply with what would be their new use permit conditions and didn't violate the extended activations.
Yeah, and if it meets certain design criteria.
Right. And what we would also do, I think, in the two public areas is they would simply be short-term. We would have to put up a sign that says to go curbside parking, but it would be signed appropriately for those two spots. And much like we have some half-hour spots right now, like in front of the post office. But we have found that those, you know, people have reacted favorably to those. But we do want to get away from, I think another theme that Director Shelton really is saying is that part of what we want to do is provide the encouragement for the businesses to make a little investment, improve the quality of the aesthetic and what they're doing. And I think if they know that there's going to be more permanency behind it, most all of the ones we've talked to have indicated that that's an investment they're willing to make.
And before I go to Councilmember Moeller, last question. For those that had tents outside, did we get any feedback on whether that is going to be a long-term seasonal request, because
At this point, it wouldn't be allowed. So
well, that's the point I'm getting at, which is if we're allowing these other modifications, and we know that the folks that have patio seating, for example, Coquetta is an easy example, but also others that will most likely want to reactivate these modifications seasonally. Is that being considered as part of this streamlined
we
ordinance?
have shared with those businesses the potential of this sunsetting, and that we were going to be bringing to the council with a recommendation that the temporary tents would only be allowed as part of a special event permit.
And
so the concessions afforded by the ERP will sunset. If for some reason they wanted one, they would have to go through the special event permit, and it would be a very limited term. At this point, most businesses that were afforded the temporary tent are aware that it'll be sunsetting and that they should be looking at a longer term solution. And
Mayor, what I would also say, Mayor, Council, most of them used tents when we had reduced seating and they weren't allowed to resume the regular seat count.
Mm-hmm.
So most of them are not interested in the increased business expense associated with the tentage when they have their normal interior space. So we have not heard that that is a, you know, most of them are comfortable with this approach going forward in the occasional special event. And or if it is going to be something longer term that's going to be above their baseline seating, then that has to be addressed through a use permit amendment anyway.
Okay, so you have to assume that if we were to allow this as part of the streamlined process or the permanent modifications to the base permits, people would be investing in the tents, not continuing to rent them, and it would be a different financial impact, because we also, I think, acknowledge that the long-term recovery is just that long-term. Just because there's indoor seating doesn't mean they've made up for 2 years of lost revenue.
Well,
so
the
I
other factor,
want to make sure that we're not pulling back on some elements that we're just going to be dealing with every 6 months, because we know that people are then going to want to be continuing to recover both the ability to keep employees hired as well as continue to be profitable. So
they are welcome to always go through the use permit amendment process and come forward before the ZDRB and the council. If there is any hardship, we would absolutely encourage, but it would just be a formal review.
right. In talking with the businesses, that was not an express concern. And I also need to remind the council also that the fire marshal and the county also have a role in regulating outdoor tentage. So there's some additional areas simply beyond that. But in our discussions with the businesses, this is really the three that they've really focused on. And, you know, some of the others start making it harder. I think, Mayor, to your point, when you start including some of these smaller elements, it's harder for us to put them in a streamlined consideration rather than having to review more specifically.
So let me just be clear. The three elements of the streamlined ordinance that we're discussing today to potentially make what I'm calling permanent is the outdoor seating, the temporary retail use, and the curbside pickup. Am I missing anything?
You are correct.
Those are the three elements. That's not all the elements that we have allowed in the economic recovery program, but those are the three that we're considering to go with on a more permanent basis with the modified use permits.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Mueller?
Okay. So my questions are a lot, what I think the mayor was possibly suggesting. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, where we are right now, June isn't too far away, but what I really see a lot of the businesses are suffering from is not really, people coming, but, staff constraints. They're really having difficulty with staffing. We've got a lot of inflation going on in like the world sometimes pretty nutty right now. So, I'm just have some concerns about, if they're not up to full staffing now or into the future, cutting off some of this stuff early is a bit of a concern. We can all kind of discuss that, but more specifically, like R&D, we received a letter from, I'm assuming some kind of manager at R&D. I don't really know him personally, asking for a 6-month continuation of the outdoor seating, and that doesn't seem to be part of our outdoor seating discussion, or is it? And then I do want to just kind of make one comment before I forget to Kirsty. I have gotten several phone calls and emails from people you've talked to, and everybody was just absolutely thrilled with everything that you came and presented, your interest in really helping them. And I just really wanted to express thank you for all the work that you did behind the scenes, because I've heard about it. So I know it's out there. So kind of back to my question. So that's what I'd like to hear about is, what staff is really kind of thought about in terms of we are not at full staff in these businesses. And if we make this, most of these things are going to go away in June. What if this continues? And then outdoor seating as well. I mean, personally, I'm going to say I really like a lot of outdoor seating. I like to have more. I like to sit outdoors. So, and then specifically the R&D outdoor seating. So,
yeah, I can answer that. Thank you for that. In regards to R&D, it is a different scenario. The design criteria that I set up was really for a hybrid of the businesses making their own business decision to either have the same number of patrons and the same number of staff, and whether to sit outside or inside, and have the opportunity, if they're on Washington Street, to have that outdoor patio. For the most part, the condition would be that they don't get more tables out of it, and that there would be annual monitoring, staff audits. And I think that most of the businesses would cooperate, because from what I witnessed, they want to have a 5-star VIP experience, and that requires a lot of staff to guest ratio. So I did see that. In regards to R&D, it's not necessarily what they were afforded was a like limited menu out on the outdoor courtyard. So it doesn't fit the outdoor dining provision that I kind of came up with, and I did do it in a way where the folks who want to continue that could basically, go right to it. There's timing, like it sunsets July 1, and there's process where they could, get started, get in, and we could work pretty fast to get them where they need to be.
Just one quick question on a streamlined process.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that they would be taken care of. In regards to R&D, I did actually ask Rakesh to submit something. They are talking about some other options up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come before the council for some concept analysis over the next 6 months. I think the takeaway for that temporary use permit, I think that is something that the community really likes. So I think that it would be nice to continue it for up to 6 months. And then I don't know how the council feels about that limited outdoor seating, but at this point, it wouldn't qualify for the streamline process. Okay. So what I asked was for them to request a 6-month extension while they work on a larger plan to present for a long-term solution.
Great, thanks, Christy.
So can you, Kirsty, explain the miscellaneous and your fee waivers and miscellaneous that would be going away?
Sure. I will just keep.
I think you may have had a photo of it, but.
Yeah. So let's talk. Can you guys see my screen? Here's some other.
What I think this is boiling down to is more about what we're talking about eliminating, and not so much what we're keeping. And we're talking about, temporary tents. I've already brought up, and we'll consider that as going away. Temporary signage potentially going away. But when you say miscellaneous, so yeah.
Here's a miscellaneous. Red asked for approval of a 12-week extension of the current use permit. Clearly that's not needed anymore. So, you know, I called it other, indoor occupancy from Jessup, an indoor occupancy of 28 people. I don't know what that was good for or if they still needed it. And I would be happy if you would wish, there was only, what did I say, 37 businesses participated. I do intend, based on the direction that you give me tonight, to send every one of these businesses a contact and ask to have a meeting to discuss what they'd like to do. I'd be happy to report back to the council what, if anything, other than what I've already presented, is something that one of these 37 businesses is interested in continuing.
Yeah, so I think that's important that we hear that, because we can't, you know, I don't want to act like I know the best way to run somebody else's business. And so we want to be supportive without unintended consequences. So I think we need to nail down exactly what the miscellaneous, I see it as miscellaneous on your slide, whether it's more one-off things, that's fine. We need to just know what they are. Like I said, temporary retail use, curbside pickup, and outdoor seating are fairly straightforward as what you're asking us to say, yes, we want in that streamlined ordinance. I just want to make sure we're not eliminating something we don't realize we're eliminating.
As part of the direction of the streamlined ordinance, I'd be happy to respond on all the other elements besides those three.
Yeah, when we have that ordinance, assuming if in fact the direction tonight is yes, put one together, we'll just want to have that kind of detail, I think, fully explained, and what the fee waivers were for and wouldn't be happening going forward, just to get a sense of what the financial implications are there.
Yeah.
Okay, Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
Thank you, and thank you, Kirsty. Can you hear me?
Yes, but there was some feedback from somebody. I'm not sure who it was.
Okay.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Okay. So I wanted to on the temporary tents and signage. Can you tell me what about the tents that is unacceptable? Because I think sometimes, especially in the heat of the summer, it's good to have that kind of coverage. And I don't understand, and they're all, an eyesore or anything. So can you expand on that? Why are the tents such a point of, they have to go?
Well, for the most part, the temporary tents were a result of the ERP. Prior to that, you wouldn't have been allowed as a business to have one unless it was part of a special event. We are encouraging folks who might want that seasonal protection to present something more long-term so that it doesn't have to be an not as thoughtful design as the long-term integrated approach of long-term shade or rain protection versus a temporary kind of one-size-fits-all tent. And then the question about temporary signage, is that what you also asked?
Yeah.
For the most part, when I started here, in response to the Zodo, I was told that the local businesses are really interested in looking at the sign ordinance for various other reasons, in addition to exterior display of merchandise, offsite signage, temporary A-frame signs.
Oh, I see.
So there's a larger conversation in regards to the sign ordinance, and temporary signage kind of is included in that. And I've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, and it is, I think, pretty well supported from the business community that they would prefer to look at the sign ordinance from a larger perspective. I'd like to work with the ZDRB and then return to the council with some potential recommendations.
Okay, and also the seating at R&D, the outdoor seating, has proven very, very popular, and I don't understand why that would have to be curtailed.
So
Well,
before
again,
we-
it's not
Lucy,
part of,
oh, sorry, just before we keep going, and this is my fault, I started this. We're starting to design the ordinance right now. And what we're being asked to do today is to authorize Kirsty and other staff to design the ordinance that we consider. So I started it with my questions about the details. And I think what we should do is stay focused on the request for tonight, which is, do we want a streamlined ordinance? If yes, then go to work and we
Okay.
provide feedback because now we're getting some comments and we can offer more, but we still need to just say, are we going to do an ordinance first?
Okay, thank you.
And we'll all want to provide feedback as we go forward, but I do think that like I said, I led us ahead of the
Mayor, I think that I appreciate your observation and sharing that. I do want to let everybody know that shade is an appropriate consideration that is different than the temporary tents. Temporary tents have a whole different thing. So
and we're going to get to that in the appropriate time, Steve. Yes. Councilmember Knight, did you have anything given that direction?
Mayor, just briefly. So I have comments about this, the draft streamline ordinance, but I also just wanted to just generally comment here that I see like there's like two questions before us, maybe you brought up, and I don't want to go into a long conversation tonight, but last October, November, the Vice Mayor recommended we extend the ERP to the end of June, the end of the second quarter. And it seems like there's, I support the work that's been done so far in terms of the streamline ordinance, but maybe there's a discussion we're having that maybe you mentioned earlier that before the ERP ordinance or the ERP program sunsets, that we're talking about it and seeing if there's a need to extend it or to modify it. And, you know, as we continue to work through a streamline ordinance. So I see it as maybe two questions and maybe a discussion we have in May or something, because at some point we have to, I assume, approve the sunset, unless it's already going to sunset. I'm willing to talk about that if there's a need to continue it, because we're looking at the business environment in the community and what, you know, how and continues to support our businesses.
I will say, it is already expected to sunset without any further council action. It was already extended for the year. It's a little bit difficult if you were just to extend it, because I think a lot of these businesses really want to invest in this outdoor seating program. And by just doing a blanket, give you another year, I don't think it gives them the opportunity to really see what it could do. And I think what you would see is that the temporary stanchions and the temporary seating, and I just don't know if, I think that it's an opportunity right now to really look at that and support it. And then it's also a blanket kind of go ahead. I don't think you could differentiate between, you know, business A got an ERP permit to do, you know, whatever versus business B. What I'm proposing to bring to you is a streamlined ordinance that would basically allow, on a case-by-case basis, the businesses that do want to continue with certain criteria, it would afford them the ability to continue business by business rather than a blanket.
So I want to just clarify what Councilmember Knight is asking for is exactly what we're doing right now, trying to do, which is give direction to staff to put together a streamlined ordinance that we consider and potentially adopt before the sunset at the end of June. That's very simple. Staff has said it's very doable before the sunset. We don't need to worry about any kind of extension at this time because we're talking about making things permanent. So I think if we focus on the elements of the, not even the elements, we're talking about the three specific items of the ERP that we want to make in a permanent through a streamlined ordinance. Let's focus on, do we want the ordinance? If yes, let's say so tonight, and then we let staff put together what the content of that ordinance is before anything expires at the end of June.
And I would also clarify, thank you, Mayor, for that. The handful of businesses that have miscellaneous or unique ERP conditions, we will be giving them enough lead time so that they can then come to us and seek to either extend or modify their use permit. So I do want, they'll still have that. And then, because there are some things the council has clearly indicated to me that they don't want to see continuing. So, you know, I think you bring up a very good point, Mayor, that the program is reaching that. We need to figure out the elements that make sense to move forward, and then the elements that an individual business on a unique case-by-case basis may need to evaluate and bring back. And I do think you have strong, you could say we have had a good partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and a number of businesses that are behind this. And I think that deserves some consideration, and they are certainly willing to help us, I think, craft the last final part of this discussion and bring it to you in the next 30 days.
Councilmember Knight, I think you may have had another thing you wanted to ask or comment.
No, I'm just ready to give my comments about the streamlined ordinance if we're ready to do that now. Thank you.
We're going to take public comment before we give council direction. So I don't see any other hands raised. If we could stop sharing the screen. And Eddie, if you can read, I believe we have about 6 public comments. If you could please go ahead and read those.
Yes, Mayor, and just to let you know, we have received more public comments since the item began.
Okay.
Now we are splitting these comments with Julie Baldia, Deputy Director Baldia. So the first one is from Carl Johnson. As everyone knows, throughout the COVID epidemic, many small businesses were hit especially hard by the restrictions. Fortunately, many of the local restaurants and tasting rooms were given the option of creating outdoor seating to comply with the restrictions. This was a lifesaver for many of the enterprises. We have visited a number of restaurants and tasting rooms in town and around the Bay Area that develop outdoor solutions. From closing a street to allow seating to creating a tented area in the alley behind the restaurant, all of these were pleasant experiences and generally expanded the ambience of the local. More importantly, this was the only way that these small businesses were able to survive. With the lifting of many of the COVID restrictions, some cities and towns are considering returning to the previous restrictions on outdoor dining. If the outdoor dining area in some way impacts the free flow of pedestrians or vehicle traffic, these restrictions may make sense. However, for many businesses, the addition of the outdoor space continues to be an opportunity for them to recover from the financial ravages of the past few years. Within the town of Yountville, I cannot think of a single place where the outdoor dining does anything other than expand the relaxed and leisure atmosphere for which our town is famous. Outdoor dining is a long-time accepted practice in many of the most famous tourist destinations, and Yountville should join their ranks.
Okay, this is from Heron House, Yountville. Town Council and Mayor Dunbar. On behalf of our family and team at Heron House, I want to thank you for creating the temporary modifications for our business operations while we as a community have been navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. The outdoor seating added flexibility to our business throughout the pandemic. Being able to accommodate guests who preferred to be outdoors due to concerns regarding COVID was essential. It also helped us connect with locals, being able to accommodate them in creating a more casual tasting option. The visibility of people in the courtyard draws guests off the main street and into our store to browse. They are delighted to discover us. Adding our courtyard tasting has added revenue to our bottom line and a great option for guests staying in town to stop back in and spend a little more time with us. It has been a really important extension of what we do, and adding a casual tasting option is what guests are asking for. Our outdoor patio space has been essential to our overall offerings at Heron House. We have been able to staff this more casual option with our current team. A majority of our guests are staying in town, walking town for the day, and we feel our current parking plan is not being impacted by this additional seating. We are thrilled to continue to enhance our courtyard through landscape, stylish and comfortable furnishings, and create a comfortable space for guests. Many thanks, Allison Stelzer, Creative Director, Heron House.
The next one is from Hillstone Restaurant Group from Rakesh Patel. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members, with reference to the June 30th sunset clause for patio food service and the to-go provision for restaurants enacted during the COVID pandemic, I would like to request a 6-month concession on these items as it specifically relates to our restaurant, R&D Kitchen in Washington Square. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Mayor and Council, I would like to address your staff's recommendations to develop a streamlined process as part of economic recovery plan. First, I would like to commend you for the so quickly allowing temporary modifications to business operations during the pandemic. I believe that those changes played a very important role in allowing the businesses in our town continue operations. They were able to continue to attract visitors to our town to enjoy the many wonders we offer, and maybe more importantly, to continue employing their staff. We certainly were especially grateful for the additional outdoor tables. They added such a nice European ambiance, whether we were walking by and talking to diners or dining ourselves and chatting with pedestrians. If the tables were full, we could do takeout and enjoy all of our favorite meals at home. If we weren't hungry, just sit in the sun with a glass of wine. The pandemic would have been almost unbearable without these amenities. I should also mention that as a volunteer at our Welcome Center, I had many visitors comment how wonderful it was to come to Yountville to enjoy the alfresco dining and or wine tasting experiences. For all of these reasons, I hope that you vote to direct staff to draft a streamlined ordinance, allow these kind of activities to continue, and to also work with the ZDRB to perform a comprehensive review of the sign ordinance. Sincerely, Rob Stout.
I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on the town staff proposal to streamline the process that supports the positive outdoor activities allowed during the COVID pandemic under the Economic Recovery Act. The temporary modifications allowed during the pandemic were invaluable to the businesses and the locals and visitors in Yountville. As a volunteer at the Welcome Center, I know visitors and locals appreciated unobstructed views of Yountville's environs and the health and safety factors of outdoor activity. The staff's memo to Mayor and Council clearly indicates that administrative matters for such a provision, the specifics to ensure that sites offer full access, ingress and egress, and detailed design features for signage and the like have been carefully considered. I encourage you to wholeheartedly support the proposal for such a streamlined ordinance. Respectfully, Sandy Fagan, resident.
Mayor and council members, first off, thank you for your leadership and continued support of our business community throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. The Transitional Support Program, then the Economic Recovery Program, allowed our businesses to pivot early on in the pandemic and plan for the uncertain future ahead. Now, 2 years later, we are entering the next phase of this new normal, and yet again, the Yountville Town Council is stepping up to support our businesses as we navigate what is next. The connection between the economic vitality of Yountville and the quality of life we enjoy here in town has never been more clear. The proposal before you today to create a streamlined ordinance is the culmination of countless hours between town staff, the chamber, and our business community, working together to figure out what is needed to next support our businesses here in town. Throughout the Economic Recovery Program, we discovered something that positively impacts our community and supports a vibrant streetscape: outdoor seating, focused primarily along Washington Street. We also discovered the success of small business pop-ups thanks to our friends at Jessup Cellars. Additionally, curbside pickup has been a great success for both residents and businesses. Curbside pickup continues to be used by R&D Kitchen and is a convenient option for residents, folks working in town, and visitors. In the beginning of the Economic Recovery Program, I know many of us were concerned about parking impacts or increased employees at our businesses due to the outdoor seating increases. Much to the surprise of many, we haven't seen parking impacts or increased employees as we thought we might have. Many of our businesses have continued with a reservation-first approach for guests, as well as many are still feeling the impacts of not being fully staffed on site due to the ongoing labor shortage. which we do not anticipate changing anytime soon. This has led to our businesses to seeing less guests, but creating more personalized experience for them. In the staff report, staff also recommends a more comprehensive review of the signage ordinance conducted by the ZDRB. The Chamber is supportive of this approach and has been working on compiling feedback from our businesses for this discussion. The Yountville Chamber is supportive of the streamlined ordinance approach presented by staff today. We believe the administrative process for approval is not overly burdensome for our businesses and will enable them to participate more quickly, which is important as we move into spring and summer. We ask Town Council support a streamlined ordinance as it pertains to continued allowance of outdoor seating, retail pop-up activations, and curbside pickup. Thank you for your consideration and continued partnership. Whitney Diver McAvoy.
And Annie, you mentioned we have additional.
Yes, Mayor. The next one comes from Alison Negron, and it's supported by Ryan Hill, both from Hill Family Estate. To the members of the Town Council, as a small family-owned and operated business, we have been sincerely grateful for the allowances and modifications made by the Town of Yountville to permit us to host guests outdoors in the midst of the pandemic. Hosting outdoors allowed us to continue operating in a manner that has been both our employees and guests feel safe and comfortable. Guests enjoying themselves outside and taking in the sights and sounds of Yountville has been added so much to the ambience of our town. Because the footprint of our outdoor seating space is small, the addition of 3 outdoor tables has not impacted our current staffing or parking concerns and will not impact us in the future. The possibility of outdoor seating being a permanent staple is very exciting to us, and we plan to invest in more permanent furniture and landscaping to further enhance the space and curb appeal. We appreciate your consideration of this streamlined ordinance and look forward to the possibility of continuing our outdoor guest experience for years to come.
I believe this is the last one. On behalf of Silver Trident Winery, I want to thank the Town Council for their incredible support of the business community, especially since March of 2020. By creating the temporary modifications to allow outdoor tastings, the town enabled us to continue doing business during the darkest hours of the pandemic. We firmly believe that outdoor seating has since added so many benefits for our business as well as the town of Yountville in general. In addition to creating a wonderful curb appeal for our business, outdoor seating options have also allowed us to better manage our guest flow and overall guest experience. We continue to host guests that prefer to sit outdoors either out of caution or because they really enjoy the European atmosphere and vibe of outdoor seating. It's a fantastic option for everyone. Although visitor traffic throughout the Napa Valley was higher than expected in 2021, our employee count has remained the same as pre-pandemic levels. We certainly understand some of the previous concerns that outdoor seating could potentially have on local traffic and or town parking. However, for us, most of our guests are either already staying in town, they're making multiple stops while visiting Yountville, and or they are using some sort of driver rideshare service. Therefore, I can confidently say that our outdoor seating has not made a negative impact on town parking. If allowed to continue our outdoor tastings on a permanent basis, we would certainly upgrade our outdoor furniture and create a more pleasingly aesthetic demarcation barrier between our tasting area and the public sidewalk. We are in full support of permanent outdoor activities for our local businesses. We really appreciate your consideration and all of your tremendous continued support. Sincerely, Shane Soldinger.
And that was the last one, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much for that feedback. And then I believe Councilmember Knight was prepared to offer some comments about this. So just a reminder, what we're looking at tonight is to direct staff to create a streamlined ordinance draft that we will still see again, that includes outdoor seating, temporary retail opportunities, and curbside pickup specifically. Initiate a comprehensive review of the signed ordinance and work with ZDRB on that review, and then notify the businesses that not only what we're doing, but also what elements will be sunsetting by the end of June of this year. So Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate the work that the town and the chamber's done to date. And I look forward to some continued discussion when we talk about economic development. And so I know the comments you're looking for is on the draft streamline ordinance. There are 3 elements: the temporary retail, curbside pickup, and outdoor seating. I fully support the temporary retail and curbside pickup. And I support the outdoor seating element, but with qualifications. I think if our effort is to promote more street activity and bistro style seating, then I think our site plan criteria and the design criteria should be minimalist, decor, simple, inviting design to the to the streetscape. And I think our director Shelton showed us some pictures maybe from other communities, maybe around the world, where this kind of site plan criteria and design criteria really promotes, kind of invites, and there's a connection to the street. And so when our report talks about integrating heating and cooling equipment, shade structures, and landscape and plants, then I don't think it should negatively affect our connection with the street and block views. So I support the outdoor seating, but I think we should just be sure we're continuing to protect that connection to the street. And so, my last hope and recognition is that, economic development is community development. So all that we can do is to gather resident ideas, and their responses and their support, I think, is important as well. So I also support the having the Zoning Design Review Board review the sign ordinance, and with all the items in the economic recovery program that will sunset at the end of the second quarter, then I'm supportive of letting those items that we're not reviewing today or won't see back in some review form sunsetting. So thank you.
Thank you. And Kirsty, I want to just confirm the timing of meetings with ZDRB. Do you have an expectation yet on when ZDRB might have this item for discussion?
Yeah, it would go to the April 12th ZDRB hearing, which would be difficult to get it back to you by the April 19th. So then it would come to you May 3rd for the first reading, and then it wouldn't be effective until middle of June.
Yeah, so there's really plenty of time for that review in conjunction with our review. Okay, thank you. Other council comments? You all given up already on raising your hands? Okay, Councilmember Mueller.
I'm good. I'm not on mute. I'm very much in support of the streamline process, and I'll just kind of be quick. I agree with what we're going to sunset in the staff report. What I hear from all the public comments and phone calls I've been getting is this outdoor seating. So I'm very, very much in support of some outdoor seating. And even though things might look really good with, planters and some bushes and all that, I mean, where we can get that, fine. I'm willing to also, be a little flexible there. If we can't always get that, let's do what we can to get something, whatever we can, because it has really changed the look of Yountville, the feel of Yountville. And, I don't think our desire now for outdoor seating is really going to go away anytime soon. It's like we've never done it before. We've got an opportunity to do it during COVID. I love it. So I'm willing for some flexibility on, if the situation comes. I mean, I even wrote down in my notes, I'd be willing to give an incentive for outdoor seating. So I'm very pro outdoor seating. Those are in my comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you, Kirsty Shelton Ford. I too am very, I love the vibrant streetscape we have created because of the outdoor seating. And so I'm very much in favor of that. And the temporary retail pop-ups, I think that's a wonderful, way to at least introduce some diversity and the curbside pickup, I think, is a good idea as well. So those three things are fine. I am still concerned about sunsetting everything June 2022, because unless at that time everyone feels that the economy has recovered enough to sunset all of those provisions. But I am very much looking forward to seeing what you're going to come up with in the ordinance, and that will color my decision for sure. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Takahashi.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to staff for this. I'm supportive of the elements as presented. I'm especially excited about the outdoor seating. I echo Councilmember Muller's sentiments and Vice Mayor Dornbecker and the mayor in that I think it adds a vibrancy to the street. I think that the business owners are very good at figuring out what works best and what they have a very good sense of design sentiment. However, I will be looking forward to seeing what you all come up with along in your collaboration with the business owners. So looking forward to this coming back and seeing what you all come up with.
Thank you. And I'll just add that I agree certainly with the streamline ordinance and want to move forward with this. I want to add a couple other things though as well. One is certainly the expectation or the concern I think we had is, will we be creating a consequence that we don't want with outdoor seating? We're very fortunate in Yountville to have properties that can offer that experience and the vibrancy that comes with it, and not have parklets, built in the street and taking away, dozens of parking spaces. I know that other jurisdictions just don't have the capabilities that our businesses have here. We're very fortunate to have that, and I'm pleased that we have seen very positive outcomes with how we have activated the original economic recovery, and now I think the future permit conditions that we can really accept. I also want to acknowledge, I really respect the feedback that we get from our business community, those people that have actually invested in our community and continue to support our community. I take it very seriously when they put the money out, even knowing that it could be temporary, to not only provide a way for them to continue to deliver their business experience, but for the betterment of the entire town of Yountville. And I really appreciate what they've done. We owe it now to them to recognize, while we were sensitive to unintended consequences, that we would also embrace some of these changes that had really nothing but positive consequences. So I also want to acknowledge that we've seen a significant recovery in our hotel occupancy, and with that, and our visitation in general, which means we've seen, I think to a large degree, what a busy business looks like. And so it's not like we're looking at, we're not using, quiet winter data to say, oh, there's no negative consequence to parking or something else. We've seen it year round, especially since things reopened in June when we were setting records in visitation. So I think we have very reliable information, and we have the feedback coming from our business community, who are really the ones that have the most to gain and the most to lose, because it's their investment that we're talking about. And they're all willing to make that investment. The last thing I'll mention is I want to make sure that we reach out to all of our businesses, because not just the ones that have participated in the recovery program, because some may not have been able to afford to deploy temporary seating or other temporary conditions, but knowing that they're going to be long-term / permanent, they may be in a position to pay for those amenities now. I want to make sure that we offer it to everyone. I know the whole tent issue before, people were, in some cases, unable to even rent tents because they were so expensive, as well as hard to get. And so we're saying you can go ahead and commit financially long-term and invest in your businesses, because we're investing in you as well. So I 100% support drafting an ordinance. I look forward to reviewing it so that we can make sure that there aren't any things that we're unintentionally removing or leaving in. But I think we're only leaving in things that have shown to be really positive outcomes. And if we have to set aside seasonal tenting for another time, another conversation, that's okay. But I want to make sure that we continue to support our business sector, because this recovery is far from over, and so we need to be there to support them. So I believe that's all the comments from the council. So if there is action, I would welcome a motion to direct staff to return with a draft streamlined ordinance that includes continuation of outdoor seating, temporary retail opportunities, and curbside pickup. Initiate a comprehensive review of the sign ordinance and work with the ZRB on that in the coming months, and prior to the sunsetting of the existing modifications, and also notify all businesses about the elements of the program that will be sunsetting and also that will be potentially continuing going forward. So if there is a motion to that effect, I would welcome it.
I would make that motion. Well said, Mayor.
I'll second.
Second.
I guess I should have made the motion, but Councilmember Moeller, and I believe that was Councilmember Knight with the second. And so, Eddie, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Councilmember Mueller,
Yes.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Councilmember Tagliabashi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker, Mayor Dunbar.
Yes, and Vice Mayor, we didn't really hear your answer. It just, you froze up again. Could you just repeat?
Yes, I support it.
There we go. There's just like a little freeze that happens intermittently, and when you say a short word, it froze without hearing the short word. So we got it. So that does pass unanimously. Thank you, Eddie. And thank you to all the business community and the residents that shared their perspective and their thoughts about that item. That was helpful. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10B. Consider approving resolution 22-4108, adopting a code enforcement officer safety policy. I believe we have, Gary, are you starting us off with this?
Yes, happy to, Mayor and Council. Of the many state laws that were passed, this one didn't make it into the presentation, but it does require a local code enforcement officer policy. There is a Code Enforcement Officer Association. They've developed a model policy. That's what this one is based off of. Happy to report that the town's code enforcement officers are already following the provisions that are in this policy, but state law now requires that it be adopted as a formal policy, and that's what's before you today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You barely gave me time to mute and unmute.
There's not a lot on this one.
Any questions from council? I see none. Do we have any public comment, Eddie, on this item?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion as presented by staff.
So moved.
I heard you
Did
that
that
time.
come
Yes,
through?
I did hear. Yes, motion by Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
I'll second.
I got a second by Councilmember Tagliabashi. Roll call, please, Eddie.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker.
Yeah.
Can you repeat one more time, Vice Mayor? He froze again a little bit.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Councilmember
Yes.
Tagliabashi,
Yes.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
Councilmember Mueller,
Yes.
Mayor Dunbar.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. item, Gary. It's a lot shorter than your other presentation. All right, moving on. Consider adoption of resolution number 22-4109. I'm sorry, 4109, approving the display of the Ukrainian flag on the town's ceremonial flagpole pursuant to the town's flag policy for 31 days from today in solidarity with those affected by the invasion in Ukraine. And so I will invite, is this Steve? Are you starting with this? Okay.
Yeah, and this will be a very brief report. The town ceremonial flagpole has policy requirements, and council members may request an item to be brought forward. And in this case, the mayor has requested that we fly the Ukrainian flag in support. We do have to correct a portion of the resolution. It references last year's pride flag display.
And I did notice that Eddie has already corrected it in the Prime Gov resolution. And so it may have already been corrected.
So this, and then also we will, as it alludes to, we'll be moving into the Pride flag month in June. So anyway, simple request. I don't know if the mayor wants to add to it, but it does require the council's consent to approve the use on the town council ceremonial flagpole.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for setting that up. I did want to just recognize a couple things. One is we do limit the policy to 31 days, which is why that time period specifically. I think we'd all like to believe that the need to continue to show that solidarity will be over by then, but none of us can predict that. And so I wanted to make sure that we, like we have done before, this is not just an international or a national situation. This is a local situation. And not just because that we have, and you'll be hearing in public comment, some comments that has been sent in by one of our local families that have been very directly impacted. But this impacts all of us, and we need to do more than just listen and watch what's happening on social media and on news broadcasts. So I want us to do like what we have done before as a community, which is stand up for justice and recognize when that's not happening. And so that's really the motivation that I had to bring this forward to consider. We do want to comply with our ceremonial flag policy so that we don't violate our own policy. But I do want to make this statement and have all of us make this statement together as a community that we support the people of Ukraine and hope that their suffering and the destruction of the country ends very, very soon. And there's certainly a very long time for their recovery going forward. But we can at least make this very public statement by flying the flag. So that was my motivation for the request. And I invite initial comments. We can, if you have any questions about it, I think I'd like to entertain the public comments that have been submitted before we have council comments, unless there are specific questions to the request. Seeing none, and certainly I'll invite all comments after. So Eddie, I think we're going to try to show, there were 3 video clips that were sent in at 3 minutes or less. So we'll we'll watch those and we'll add those into the record. And what we're going to caution, and I'll do this for you, Eddie, if there's any kind of problem with seeing the videos that have been submitted, because they were submitted rather late today. We have not had a chance to even run these yet, but we will be posting these in our minutes, as well as it will be a formal part of the record of the meeting. So Eddie, go ahead and we'll see if this works.
Yes, Mayor, just to clarify, it's 2 videos and 1 soundbite that were shared with us.
Okay.
Based in Yountville, but spent most of the last 4 years living in Kyiv, Ukraine. Basically up until almost 3 weeks ago when I had to leave. And, now I'm in Poland, but my heart and mind is still in Ukraine with all the stuff that's going on there now. It's really hard to look at images of places where I was in Kiev not all that long ago being bombed and destroyed and people there dying. And anything you can do to support Ukraine during this time is appreciated. I really appreciate you thinking about Ukraine and caring about what happens over there.
Before you. We greatly appreciate all the support we've been given when we spoke at the event in Yountville, but also in Justin Siena High School the other day.
We understand that your city council members are discussing the opportunity of flying the Ukrainian flag in the city, and that means a lot of us. Seeing how you pledge allegiance to your flag inspires a lot to respect the values that you hold true, and seeing that level of respect given to our flag that needs that much support right now would be of a great help and of a great assistance to our spirits and to our motivations.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hi, this is Debbie Alterstar at 1884 Larkspur Street. I want to voice support for the town's discussion about raising the Ukrainian flag on our ceremonial flagpole in town. I think it's a fine idea. And I've sent along 2 videos, one from our son Aaron Starr, the other from our frequent guests here, who are students from Ukraine who study at Minerva University in San Francisco. And I think I should say thank you to Sharon Stensis. She's covered our reasons for caring about Ukraine quite extensively, and so I don't think I need to explain that part further. I would like to say that I think that there's a direct connection for us having the largest veterans home in the country in our town and observing many festivities related to World War II and the Great Generation. There's a connection between that and these people in Ukraine and their fight for freedom. Anyone who's taken trips to Kiev has probably been to the Maidan, where the fight for freedom took place in 2014 and prevailed, and read all the different plaques and seen all the photos there. It's really quite moving. When I was there in 2018, there was a big wraparound banner on a building that I will send a picture for that said, "Freedom is our religion." And that's how I feel every time I'm there. I'm really reminded that freedom is so important. And I think that's why this struggle is captivating hearts across our nation, in our community as well. So I'd like to also suggest that we take to heart that the symbolism of flying a flag in solidarity is more meaningful if we can follow through with some kind of actions. Examples of actions that might support Ukrainians in the Bay Area or in Ukraine include posting a list, sending out a list of recommended nonprofits suggested by Napa Valley Community Foundation as places people could donate to support refugees or provide humanitarian aid. So the nonprofit we specifically are raising funds for, Nova Ukraine, that's based in the Bay Area, is the one local organization on that list of 10 organizations. The other way we could be supportive is that if you have gravitas as a council to write the appropriate electeds in the state or in the federal government about interest in supporting there being refugees that come to California. Maybe our community would even say we would like to sponsor a refugee family. I don't know. A third way might be to make it easy for people to drop off letters with their comments that they would like to have go to Congressman Thompson. He said that he'd like to hear what constituents have to say about Ukraine, but probably only people like me who are on his mailing list know about that. So that's another connection you could make. Thanks. Thanks so much for your support.
And Eddie, do we have any other public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
Thank you. Thoughts from the council? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Councilor Mueller.
I'd just like to thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. It's It's amazing. It is very poignant for us since we do have, I knew Aaron since he was just a little squirt walking around the block. So, and, you know, I think we're all looking for some even small thing to kind of do to show our solidarity. And thank you very much, Debbie Starwood, for her comments and providing us with some ways that we can help on a financial basis. So very supportive, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Other council comments? Councilmember Tagliabashi, and then I think Vice Mayor after that.
Thank you, Mayor Dunbar. I think, you know, even small gestures make big statements. I think it's certainly true for this, and thank you for bringing it forward. And my family and I stand with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I know this is why, right? It matters to all of us. Vice Mayor.
Well, I was doing all right until I heard Councilmember Tagliabashi. I also do agree. I want to thank Debbie and Alterstar. I did tune into webinar that they held on Sunday, and it was very moving. And I hope everyone is able to make some sort of financial donation to help there who've lost everything within 18 or 19 days. It's shocking. But thank you, Mayor Dunbar, for bringing it up.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Just also want to say that I support what this effort we have of raising the flag is. May seem small, but I think as some of those students spoke is very important. And I want to thank the Star family for all that they've done to help educate us, and we keep Aaron and Aaron Starr in our thoughts. And you know, we had an opportunity a few weeks ago for some students from our Ukrainian students to come to Yountville and speak, and they were passionate and eloquent and spoke of just the terror that the Ukrainian people are going through now, and whatever we can do to support Ukraine is so important now. So I appreciate, I support what we're doing here. So thank you, and thank you to all that will provide support to the Ukrainian families and the people.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion then that we adopt resolution number 22-4109, approving the display of the Ukrainian flag on the town's ceremonial flagpole pursuant to the town's flag policy for 31 days. But what I am going to do is to modify that from today, because we do not have the flag yet. We have it on order. And as soon as we receive it, I think that's when we can start the 31 days compliant with the policy in solidarity with those affected in Ukraine.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by myself, Vice Mayor Dornbecker seconded. Roll call vote, please, Eddie.
Yes. Mayor Dunbar?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dornbecker?
Yes.
Councilmember Tagliabashi?
Yes.
Councilmember Knight?
Yes.
Councilmember Muller?
Councilmember Muller, you're muted.
Yes.
There you go. Thank you. And thank you. I felt that this was going to be an easy decision for us, and I think it is. I want to thank Steve also for helping organize this and going ahead proactively and ordering a flag so we can get it up on this pole as quickly as possible. So what I've also asked Steve is when we do have that available to us, that he reaches out and lets all of the council know. And also if anyone in the public would like to join us, as we do every June with the rainbow flag, We'd invite any members of the public who would like to come join us as we raise the flag representing our solidarity with Ukraine. We will make sure that we announce that in all of our usual platforms, social media and others. So again, thank you, Council, for that support, and we wish all the best for the people of Ukraine. Moving on, we don't have any staff informational reports. I don't have a specific report on Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District or from Cal Cities. I don't know if anyone else has a Cal Cities update. Councilmember Knight. You're muted still, please.
Just a comment at the end, once we've gone through the committees and all that, just an announcement. Thank you, a report.
Okay, hold on just a sec. Do we have any other committee reports from anyone? Okay, now we can go back to Councilmember Knight.
Thank you. Just want to let the council know that at our last meeting, we discussed it, or Town Attorney Bell gave us a report on AB 571. I did write a issue discussion paper and gave it to the Steve and the town attorney, and so they've received it, and I look forward to the council maybe having a discussion on AB 571 in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe Steve, if I'm not mistaken, our council protocols is that the majority of the council would need to agree to agendize that item, and we would do that once we've seen the proposal, correct?
Yeah, I anticipate that I will take Councilmember Knight's proposal, put an item together for the next council agenda meeting with the consideration of asking the council if there's something you would like to put on for further discussion. So at that meeting, the only action you would be taking is whether to formally agendize a broader discussion on the topic or not, but you will see it as an item.
And that would be on April 5th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I have a few announcements, but I want to invite any other council members if there are any other reports or announcements. I'll list a few, and if something comes to mind. I did want to recognize also another iconic individual that really stands in our history in Yountville, who passed away, Sally Schmidt, who just died at age 90 on, I believe, March 5th. And she was really a visionary chef, restaurateur, along with her husband, Don, who passed away in 2017. But really, Sally was considered a pioneer in California cuisine, probably national cuisine as well. She and Don opened the French Laundry in 1978. And then Chef Keller purchased that from them in 1994 and has continued that legacy going forward. So I did want to acknowledge and honor, even though Don and Sally had moved out of Yountville a number of years ago, they're still very much a part of the foundation and the heritage of Yountville. And so want to honor her pretty amazing life. One little bit of trivia that I picked up on in reading articles about her background, the reason for the blue door at the French Laundry was the same color as her kitchen hood that she had for many, many years. And so that stands in her honor and legacy as well. And the chicken coop, the nicest chicken coop in the country, if not the world, with the blue door as well. I again wanted to recognize the proclamation that we read earlier for Rose Solis, reminding folks that a memorial is scheduled between 1 and 5 p.m. on Sunday, March 27th at the Estate Yountville, so that we can celebrate Rose's life and all the contributions that she and her family have given to Yountville. Leadership Napa Valley Government Day is coming up on Friday. I will be participating along with Steve Rogers, and I'm not sure whom else, Joe Tagliabashi, and I know that we have some staff, and I believe, do I have it correct, Celia, you're in this leadership class? So I'm sure you've already learned that you have to say that this is the best class ever.
Best class ever.
What number are we at now?
This is class 34.
Best in 34 years, or 34 classes, yes. Well, it's great that you're participating in that, and looking forward to our participation in that. Yes, Councilmember Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have to say that class 15 was the best. But anyway, a few years
I had a feeling that might be coming. So
anyway, I just wanted to also mention that just yesterday I read in the Napa Register that State Senator John Dunlap passed away a week ago. And he, in reading his the obituary, he grew up on a prune ranch outside of Yountville. So a local connection, and a man that passed away at 99 years old, and had a big influence on the Napa Valley as a state assembly member and state senator. Thank you.
Thank you for that recognition. The last two things I wanted to mention: one, there is going to be a Vietnam War 50th anniversary event at the Veterans Home on March 29th. The details are still being worked out. There's still concerns about limited public access and participation. It's unlikely it's going to be open to the general public. They are working on trying to plan a car parade to again allow safe participation from safe distances, but details are still being put together. Hopefully that's going to be able to come together so that we can hold that very appropriate recognition. Also, again, with limited access, unfortunately, there is going to be a groundbreaking ceremony for the skilled nursing facility. It's scheduled for noon on April 5th. Again, very limited access because of COVID-19 protocols at the Veterans Home campus. I've been asked to represent the town, and so I will do that. And if they're able to invite additional either council members or other members of the community, I'm sure they will do that. But I think in the abundance of caution, they are limiting it, at least at this point, to a very small number of folks. So those are the reports and announcements I have. We do have a closed session that we will be going to after this. I'm looking last chance if there are any additional reports or announcements. I'm seeing none. So Gary, if you want to read the nature of our closed session.
Happy to. Council will now go into closed session for labor negotiations. The name of the town negotiator, Steve Rogers, Celia King, and Julie Baldia. And it's regarding Yountville Employees Association, Yountville Employees Association Management and Professional Unit.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Well, and
you also have a separate.
That's what I was going to take care of.
Zoom link.
Okay, I got it. We are going to go into closed session. Do we anticipate any reportable action, either Steve or Gary?
No, we do not.
Okay. What we do have to do, though, is we're going to leave this Zoom meeting. Julie sent to all of us just prior to this meeting, so look again in your email if you need to, a separate Zoom link for closed session. We are then going to return to this Zoom, so don't delete that Zoom, just keep it handy. After our closed session, we'll reconvene to this Zoom to finish our regular meeting and adjourn. So yes, we can take a 5-minute comfort break. Please, Council, if you can be back by no later than looks like 5:15, that's 5 minutes. And then we will reconvene in our open regular session after our closed session deliberation. So
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor, real quickly, I looked at the other Zoom link and it's not highlighted. So we may have to copy and paste it into the wherever we copy and paste. So it's not a blue link. It's not highlighted.
It is a blue link highlighted in my email.
Okay, I'll look for another one then. Thank you.
Yeah, it was sent at 2:50 p.m. from Julie, and there is a hot link where it says join Zoom meeting. So please look for that one.
I have a question on, so do we leave this meeting and then back to it? Can we do that?
Yes,
okay.
You can leave this meeting. Right. It will stay active and we'll be back in now 4 minutes. And so We'll be back at 5:15 in session.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, and we are back from our closed session. And Gary is Julie Baldia. But Gary, can you tell us, do we have any reportable action?
There's no reportable action.
Thank you. Okay, then we will move on to our final item, which is adjournment to our next regular council meeting, April 5th at 3 o'clock. I believe we have taken care of our business, but Steve is leaning forward. So
Mayor,
In the council chambers.
exactly. We will be resuming April 5th in person, 3 p.m. council chambers. So something that many of us have not done in over 2 years.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's been pretty normal.
Yeah.
At least the lights, I won't have to keep turning the lights on, or Jason.
That is correct. There will be more sensors in the room.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we will go ahead and adjourn to that in-person meeting on April 5th. And Steve, just remember to let us all know when we get the flag so we can plan a time to raise that.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.